Chapter 2. If you don't have it, I have it on the screen behind me, and so I'm excited to be able to do one of my favorite things, guys, all week is to be able to share God's word with anyone who's willing to listen online, y'all too. And so we are going to look at a classic story, and I guarantee you there is going to be an element of the story that you didn't realize was there the whole time, but it was. And now you're going to see something that's like, man, we're going to slow down on a section. But let's first read it. And we're going to read Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Some of you guys might know the story, so it might sound familiar, but pay attention to the details as we read it. Here we go. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, wise men from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who was born King of the Jews? For we saw his star and its rising and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was deeply disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. So he assembled all of the chief priests and the scribes of the people and asked them where the Messiah would be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they told him, "because this is what was written in the prophets," quote, and they're quoting now, "And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among rulers of Judah, but because out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod, unquote. Then Herod secretly summoned the wise men, asked them the exact time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child, and when you find him, report back to me so that I, too, can worship him." After hearing the king, they went on their way, and there it was, the star they had seen at its rising. And it led them until it came and stopped above the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overwhelmed with joy. Entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and falling to their knees, they worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their own country by another route. I'm going to role play a nightmare scenario for some of you, if not a lot of you. All right? Imagine this. Your phone is ringing. There's a buzz. You have a notification. And you look at it. And you open, it unlocks the screen, and you open it up. And there, to your horror, you see in a group chat dozens and dozens and dozens of pictures of a party that was happening with all of your friends or family, and you didn't know about it. All right, some of you, who would that bother? A few of you were like, wait a minute, what is this? What is going on? Like, who did what? What? And then now you're looking, and then you're like, did I miss? And you're scrolling back. Did I miss something? Like, how am I in here? What happened? Like, when? I had no clue this was going to go down, right? And no answer. That would have been really cruel, by the way, for someone to not invite somebody to something and then add them into a group chat with a bunch of pictures. Jeez, that is like, 10-level troll right there. Golly. But imagine that, and there you are looking at those pictures, and you're just swiping, and you're seeing memories being made, things that will turn into inside jokes for years to come, and they did it all without you. For some of you, maybe it wouldn't be a big deal. For others, yes. I mean, maybe your FOMO, which is it's this fear of missing out. Maybe for you, it's a little different. Maybe for some people, it's like, oh my gosh, I missed this Black Friday deal. I had no clue, And for a lot of us, you have different things that you missed out on, right? And that's a big deal, right? I mean, that sense of fear of falling behind is a big deal for a lot of people. I mean, I know right now, listen, I know enough, and me too. When you look at this and you start looking at different stuff and you start comparing your life with others, And then how many of you ever wondered, wait a minute, am I falling behind? Or you want to constantly be on your phone because you don't want to fall behind of the trends. You don't want to fall behind what's happening. You don't want to be left out. Listen, it's a big deal. I mean, so much so that, even for me, like I've noticed some habits and tendencies that me and Alicia in our Amazon cart right now, we have a cell phone jail that I haven't purchased yet, but it's there. The kids know it's coming. And so you can fit phones and remotes and different things in there, put a time lock on it, and it won't open up until it opens up. So interesting. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. And so, but listen, that fear of missing out, fear of falling behind, fear of being left behind, it's a big deal for a lot of us. Now, as bad as that is, what do you do when you realize that you did miss out on something important, even life-changing? For some people, that can create a crazy level of anxiety because it's too late, right? Maybe it's an opportunity of a lifetime or this or that, and here you are. Now, what do I do? So we're going to go back at this story and another one in the Old Testament, also from the book of Micah. We're going to look at another chapter. Did you know? Oh my gosh. And so there we go. And so we're going to look at another chapter. I had a feeling. But we're going to look at both Matthew and Micah to see a connection, to be able to address for all of us, number one, the fear of missing out on something super important, but also the practical steps when we realize it is too late. We did miss out on something. Now what? Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with the story, right? The wise men and the star and all that other stuff. So we're going to look at three different groups of people, all right? The first one is the very well-known one, right? So you got the wise men, all right? What's the song? How does it go about them, the Christmas song? We three kings, all right? We three kings. Obviously, what gifts did they bring Jesus? Gold, frankincense, myrrh. Three different gifts. So, and that is where the tradition comes from, guys, that there were three kings. If you read again, we have zero clue how many kings there were. Or not even kings, what they were. These guys were affluent, influential, smart astrologers, astronomers. I always confuse the two. I think it's astronomers. And so scientists that actually had a heart for God and his word. And so we're going to look a little bit at them first, all right? They're the easy ones. Now, 800 years after Micah wrote his letter and his prophetic letter, Matthew is writing his gospel. So there's 800 years between Micah and what we just read in Matthew. And Matthew, which we also talked about last week, here's one literally interesting detail you got to catch, guys. See, Matthew's story is very unique. The wise men story only happens in Matthew. And there's for a reason, because Matthew knows his audience. I think I talked about this last week, in that I know I'm not going to make I'm not going to make sports references to you guys in this scenario if a lot of you guys don't follow sports. That's a wasted effort. But Matthew knows his audience, and who's Matthew writing to? Matthew is writing to the Jews. He is a Jew himself, and actually the worst kind of Jew in their opinion, because his former job was some of you guys might know this, tax collector. Now, I know who loves paying taxes for some of you guys that have a government job. I'm sorry, but there's a stigma to that. But these guys were greater crooks. They were Jews who betrayed their own country and built riches on the backs of their own people. And now here's a redeemed former tax collector telling them, "Hey guys, I love you, by the way. I have a message for you." I mean, Jesus, did you not have anybody on the bench better than? No one's going to want to listen to this guy, unless. That's the point. And so Matthew is writing, and so he includes a detail, which last week we talked about Isaiah. Matthew included a prophecy from Isaiah. Now in the story, in the next chapter, he's including a prophet of Micah. Why is he constantly going back to the Old Testament? Because he's talking to the Jewish people, and he wants them to know, listen, Jesus is the Messiah that we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for this guy forever. He's the one. He was the one that all of these things were pointing to. And so what do we know about these wise men? Well, first off, what do we don't know? We don't know how many they were. We assume there's three because of the tradition. And then, songs and some other stuff. But guys, the reality is it could have been a caravan. It could have been dozens, multiples. It could have been 5. We don't know. But the reality is that there was enough. There was more than one, for sure. We do know that. We do know that in this case, not only what they said disturbed the city and disturbed King Herod, but also their presence, because here they are. I mean, these guys aren't just pulling up in an Uber, all right? Or maybe you think some camels. I mean, guys, for them to have these gifts and all of these things, they are showing up in a caravan. And imagine, again, an unexpected surprise procession of foreign dignitaries. That's a big deal. And so there is all this, wait, what is going on? Who's that? So that's what we don't know is that. What we do know is, again, they were scientists, they were astronomers, they were smart, influential, probably, we don't know, but probably from Babylon. And so the cool thing about that is that the reason why these, by the way, they're also Gentiles, meaning they're non-Jews. And so why are these non-Jews so consumed about this promised Messiah? Unless they cared and believed that he was there for them too. And so it's believed that Daniel, when the people of Israel were in Babylon for those 70 years, Daniel stayed there, and his influence lasted for generations, to the point now that there were non-Jewish people waiting for the Messiah to show up and believing that they were included as well. So much so, guys, that they made this very expensive trip all the way from, I mean, it was probably hundreds of miles. In this case, it's assumed maybe 500 to 600 miles. Back then, that's dangerous, loaded with all that money, with this and with that. Why make such a risk unless you thought it was worth it, right? That's what they believed. Oh, and by the way, interesting thing about those gifts, it's prophetic in nature. I don't think it was a mistake either, the gifts that they gave. In one case, I don't know if they saw it this way, but those three gifts show a cool thing about God's nature, by the way. Gold, what do you think when you think of gold? Huh? Perfect, pure, right? Especially that. But no, but there's a position usually associated with gold. The highest, the kings, royalty. And so here they are, remember, 3 kings, wise men, and these wise men are very wise because they recognize who the true king is. And it's Jesus, not them. And so they recognize that. That's awesome. By the way, that came in handy for Joseph and Mary for a lot of different stuff, diapers back then. But anyways, and so baby formula, But that was nice for them. It was very important, timely. Frankincense. Now, you're not going to know this, but frankincense was associated a lot with the priesthood and prayers. And Jesus is not only the King of Kings, the scriptures also calls him the great high priest. And then myrrh, which is a very interesting one. Myrrh was very expensive, and it was a valuable ointment and oil. And one key thing that myrrh was used for was for rituals embalming the dead. And so what a beautiful picture of those 3 gifts of who Jesus is: the King of Kings, the great high priest, and the great sacrifice, that he would lay down his life for us, so that we can have life. That's pretty cool. Also, those 3 gifts, if you look back in the Old Testament, they were given to King Solomon in a ceremony when he became king. Why is that important? For the Jews, it matters, guys. Because again, there was a promise to King David. There was a promise from Abraham down, and eventually to Isaac and Jacob and the people of Israel, and then finally to Judah. And there was a promise given to David. It said, there will be one from you, David, that will reign forever. And so Solomon's son, King David had a son, Solomon, who followed him. And the gifts that were given to him were gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So the 3 wise men giving these gifts was for them recognizing, we believe that this is the descendant and the fulfillment of the Davidic covenant. And we are recognizing and honoring him as a son of David, just as King Solomon was inaugurated as the king with those gifts. They wanted to inaugurate Christ as king. That is it, guys. You could say these wise men, bro, they were smart dudes. Okay, they knew their word. They knew it. They knew what they were doing. And so that is awesome to be able to see those details. The wisdom of the wise men was not found, though, in their scriptural knowledge, not found in the thing with the stars, which, by the way, was weird in and of itself. When was the last time you saw a star move and hover over a house? Okay? Which, by the way, that disappeared and shows up out of nowhere and stops. All right? Guys, this was a supernatural thing. It wasn't just like Orion's belt that just kind of fell off, okay? You know, this was a supernatural light that guided them. It was a new star, a new light that was never charted, that they never seen it before. And they followed it. In faith, by the way, all the way. And so, but their wisdom, guys, was not in their vast knowledge of the stars and of politics and even of the scriptures. The wisdom of the wise men is shown in their humility. Guys, and that's the one thing, when you think about the wise men from now on, if you have nativity scenes, every time you look at the wise men, I want you to think of how humble they were. Because when they saw that star and they knew what the star meant and the star was taking them to Jesus, what emotion did they feel? They were overwhelmed with, anybody remember? Joy. They saw it and they were overwhelmed with joy. Why? Because they believed that this promise was for them too. They were overwhelmed with joy to think. And again, the whole trek, all of the nonsense, all they had to go to. I mean, these guys are used to being served and admired. Think about that. These people are used to being served and admired. And what do we see them doing? Serving and adoring a child. A child. Not a baby, by the way. Notice they entered a house. So this was considered 2 years after Jesus' birth, around there. This is why King Herod decides to kill all babies 2 years and under to cover it. So the wise men were not there when the shepherds were. There was a separate incident. They're in a house, not in a stable. This is a child, not a baby. And so, but think about that. Even the logic of that sounds weird unless there was something in their hearts that convinced them and they saw. And they were willing to serve and adore. And so you got to think, and I have this image of a seed. I want you to, when you think of the three wise men, or the wise men, look at, I just did it. All right, think of this seed. If you look at a picture, guys, you guys know what a seed is. Okay? In order for a seed to be able to produce, all right? In order for a seed to be able to produce, can I just put it on the ground? What do I have to do? All right, and I know, by the way, for online, I hope, hopefully we've been today, every Sunday, I want to pause for a minute, guys. Pray every Sunday. You literally don't know what happens behind the scenes. The tech crew today and everything, I mean, we literally got it working up until like a minute. There was a nationwide nonsense with the program that we use with all other churches. It was nuts out of all days. So I think it's working. So, Carlos, you have the pictures? I just want to double check because I don't know if it's not working. That way I can help you. Is there okay, perfect. Okay, so guys, look. Obviously, we have a seed on the ground over here. All right, for the seed to work, what has to happen? You have to do what? For a seed to grow up, it first has to be put down, right? It has to go down first for it to grow up. And so think of these wise men. Why, these people, regardless of, they probably had everything that the world had to offer them. They had riches, they had influence, they had achievements, they had all these things, but they were missing one thing and they knew they couldn't buy it. They were missing one thing, and what was it? It was God. And they were willing to obey God and obey his word and do what it took. And so for that seed to be able to produce, it has to go in the ground. And again, think of that humility, guys. For some of us, humility might sometimes feel like, wait, I got to take like a step backwards before taking a step forwards, because humility it's rough for us. It almost feels like we're not going in the right direction. But guys, humility is not about taking 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. No, humility is about taking a step out of your own way. That's what humility is. You are stepping out of your way and turning to see God and to see him pointing the way closer to him to follow. These guys were willing to do it, and this is an example for us. We should model their humility, model their sacrifice, and look at that. When you are convinced, just the overwhelmed with joy at the sight of a light. And we should constantly be overwhelmed with joy when we catch the light of the world, Jesus, in our hearts and our minds and his word. So the reality, guys, that's what matters. So the kings are important, and hopefully you'll never see them a little differently, and you can appreciate that. But there was another person that those wise men interacted with. Who was he? Important dude. King Herod. King Herod is another big picture here, right? King Herod the Great is what he is called. King Herod the Great. The wise men go to Jerusalem. And why do they go to Jerusalem? Because it is the most logical place for the king of the Jews to be, right? I mean, think about it. If you're going to whatever country, shout out a country. Any country. If you're going to Israel, capital city, What? Jerusalem. Give me another country. England, Italy. What's the most important city in all of those? You would think London, Rome, right? Any country. Where does the king reside? Usually in the capital, right? And so where do the wise men go? Straight to the capital. And they go to King Herod. We're here to see the birth of the king of the Jews. And so they went there and it was logical, but King Herod did not like that news. All right? Listen, one of the coolest things that we got to do when we were in Israel was we got to see, the reason why King Herod was called King Herod the Great was because of a lot of his architectural masterpieces that still exist today. If you guys want to see a phenomenal thing, tell me you guys are with us. Masada is on another planet. Guys, I need y'all to just Google, not now. Okay, some of y'all are going to do it, but Google that because that is still, like there were rocks that were still during the time of Jesus and they were still there and you can tell confirmed. And so, guys, King Herod the Great was great in a lot of ways and great in his accomplishments. He built the third temple in which Jesus and all that was part of his thing that he did. But King Herod was also great in pride. Super paranoid, by the way. He was always paranoid, and he was the puppet ruler from Rome. In fact, as we learned and we've seen that he was so paranoid over the throne, he got married 9 times, killed one of them, all right? And so killed one of the wives because he wasn't happy with and whatever. He killed a brother, multiple of his own sons. Killed them all. Why? Because he did not want anyone to threaten his rule because he is King Herod the Great. And now here wise men show up. So where's the king of the Jews? He's like, you're looking at him, bro. I was like, no, he's just born. What? King Herod was not happy. Very disturbed when he heard those things. In fact, when he goes and says, wait a minute, he goes to the priest, right? He goes to the scribe and say, what are these guys talking about? They're saying the Messiah is supposed to be born in Jerusalem? Where? He was not a full Jew, by the way. And so what's going on here? And so they look up Micah. And by the way, can we look up Micah? I didn't read it earlier. I think we're going to read it now. Let's read Micah 5, 1 through 5. This is a little bit earlier than what we read earlier. So this is what the priests and the scribes quoted. Now, we're going to read a little bit more of the quote because it's important. You got to see it. Just a couple verses. So in verse 5, this is what the priest told King Herod. But let's read it in greater context. Now, daughter who is under attack. He's talking about, this is God prophesying and speaking over the nation of Israel. That's who this daughter is. You slash yourself in grief, and the siege is set against us. They are striking the judge of Israel on the cheek with a rod. Now, they were under attack, and one of their kings was physically attacked. And so during this time, so let's read verse 2. Bethlehem, and this is what they quoted. Bethlehem Ephrathah, you are small among the clans. One will come from you to be a ruler over Israel for me, God said. His origins is from antiquity, from ancient times. Therefore, Israel will be abandoned until the time when she who is in labor has given birth. Then the rest of the ruler's brothers will return to the people of Israel. He will stand and shepherd them in the strength of the Lord, in the majestic name of the Lord his God. They will live securely, for then his greatness will extend to the ends of the earth. He will be their peace. And then there's a continuation there. There's a pause. So when he heard that quote and probably the rest of it, there's a few things in there that bothered him because, number one, he did not see himself as that king from God. He was the king from Rome. And two, wait, his greatness and his name is going to be known all throughout the world? Not if I have anything to do with it. That is King Herod. That is what his deal is. And so he was King Herod the Great, yes, great in pride. And we looked at the humility of the wise men, right? Now, A.B. compare that to the audacity, the pride of this man's heart. And in fact, it was this pride, guys, that ruined him. It was this pride that corrupted him. It's pride that killed him. He died in his pride. Very sad. And just how great that sin was. And in fact, he was, that's why I said earlier, the reason why he goes and when he finds out the wise men don't come back, he creates an edict, kill every baby 2 years and under. Because I don't want even a rumor that any one of these kids were the ones that they saw and will become because it's a threat to my power. It's a threat to my rule. Guys, listen, it's going to include a lot of us. There's a lot of times we want to kill God's word or anything in us that would cause us to submit to him. Because too many of us, we like to sit on our own thrones. We like to call the shots. And guys, that sense of pride is very dangerous. In fact, okay, let me put this other picture here. I want you to imagine this. I know you've seen, driving down the road, you've seen these curves, these signs that says a curve up ahead, right? And there's normally it either says slow down or it gives a specific, a smaller or, a reduced speed, right? And you might have seen one of those. And obviously, why do they do that? Why do they do that? What happens if you hit the curve, all right, if you're still going under the speed limit, if the speed limit is 65, but you're obeying the law, but you hit a curve at 65, what's going to happen? Anybody? Wild guess. You're going to fly. Look at that one. That's one. You're going to fly. Maybe if there's no guardrail, maybe you'll hop right over that, right? I mean, but you're going to eat that curb, like literally, and not in a good way. Not eating in the good way. You're not going to eat it up. No, you're not going to leave crumbs. Not like that. And so you're going to, it's going to be bad. You might die. You might kill somebody else. And so imagine, guys, you see curve up ahead, slow down. And instead, you gun it. All right? Instead, you gun it. I'm like, tell me to slow down. I'm going to go faster. You're just going to make it worse. I know a few people I'm related to that would do the same. And guys, I want you to know this is what happened to King Herod. King Herod King Herod, there's the king of the Jews, the Messiah. Oh, the word was brought up, and they were saying, it's being fulfilled in front of you. Slow down, humble yourself before the Lord. And what does King Herod do? Guns it. And he goes further into his pride. And he ruined himself. And not only that, look at the damage that he did to innocent folks. Guys, I want you to understand the lie that if you ever heard somebody say this, well, it's just my life. Who am I hurting? It's just my life. I ain't hurting anybody. It's my life. Yeah, but there's collateral damage with decisions that you make. You're not the only one who you hurt. And there's innocent, unnecessary people that could be hurt because of your stubbornness or any other way. And that's if we walk in sin, same thing. Hey, don't go that way, and we gun it even more. Guys, you will hurt yourself. You will hurt others. And so pride blinds us and leads us down to a path of self-destruction. But it could be avoided. It could be avoided. Now, those are the two. Who else? That did not get a lot of attention because we tend to focus a lot on the wise men, tend to focus a lot on King Herod, but there's a group here that we cannot let slide today. We cannot let slide. Who were they? Well, there's no shepherds here. They already showed up 2 years ago-ish. Joseph and Mary are not in the story. Well, Mary is mentioned, which, by the way, it's interesting that Matthew always he lists the child first before Mary, which is, for the Jews, that's a huge thing because the child was more important than the mother in this case, The scribes, guys. I mean, this group just showed up out of nowhere, and then we just, move on. Did the wise men know that the baby would be born in Bethlehem? Did King Herod know? No. Because they showed up, hey, we're in the capital. Where's the king? Not here. What you talking about, bro? And then King Herod's like, what are these guys talking about? Who knew that he was in Bethlehem? The scribes did. The priests, the people who knew the word. I'm like, yeah, right here. Just, yep, here he is. This is where it's he's not talking nonsense. So, guys, I want us to quickly pay attention to this group because I think this one is the most dangerous group of the three. We've already talked about we should follow humility and avoid pride, but there is one in this little group that cannot go unseen. They pointed the wise men to the right way, right? They did. What didn't they do? They did not follow. They said, yeah, the king's that way. Bethlehem's that way. Just hook a right, make a left. Past the bush, you'll see it. It's right there. They pointed them to the right direction, and they did not go. And then out of all books, which is the beautiful irony here, they quote from the book of, what's the Old Testament book we've read a lot from today? Micah. And do you know what the big, 3,000 foot level, do you know what Micah is all about? Micah is about God calling out his people for not having sincere faith. Because that's what Micah's all about. That's why when you talk about chapter 6, that's the application. It's like, do something, right? If you follow me, if you believe in me, you should behave a kind of way. What do we call people who believe one thing and behave a different way? What do we call them? Hypocrites, liars, malcriados, whatever. There's a lot of different words we can come up with, right? A lot of different words we can come up with, all right? Stupid, all right? I don't know. There's a lot of different stuff. And so, guys, the people in Micah's time, they believed, but they didn't behave. They knew, but they didn't do. And who's quoting from Micah? I mean, literally, the 800 years later, these scribes are acting the same way. They're acting the same way. They don't have sincere faith. Yeah, the Messiah is supposed to be born in Bethlehem around this time. Cool. So do we have an outpost in Bethlehem kind of waiting and checking? Because, it's the welcoming party, right? If he's going to show up in Bethlehem, should we not prioritize that city and have a welcoming crew at all moments expecting? Did that happen? No. Why? Right? That doesn't make sense. That does not make sense why they wouldn't do that. Why? Because, see, just as the wise men were humble and King Herod was prideful, you know what this group dealt with? An ugly emotion character description. It's called apathy. You know what apathy is? Apathy is, you know what apathy is? Look, I'll just say it right now. That's apathy, just indifferent. You don't care. Like literally, King Herod did not know about the Messiah, and he didn't want to know. King Herod didn't know and didn't want to know. Because King Herod, you don't think King Herod would be like, oh, okay, I want to go too. He didn't know and didn't want to know. These guys knew, and they didn't care that they knew. This one is the most dangerous one that for the church and for Christians, that we need to look at that example and watch out. Because, another way of describing apathy, you know what apathy is? Being numb. Numb. You're numb to God. You're numb to his word. It's just like anything else. This is what we do. Now, guys, apathy can happen for a lot of different things. A lot of us, and I guarantee you, some of you probably do feel apathetic in some cases, maybe even with God. And when you're in apathy, it's a routine. Everything is a routine. It doesn't matter. You're just going through the motions. Now, apathy can happen because maybe you're just disappointed, right? Something let you down, and now you're just like, I'm just constantly, anybody there before? I'm constantly frustrated with people just kind of letting me down, so I'm trusting people less and less. It's harder for me to love somebody and be open. Anybody? Apathy. It was like, I keep praying and I'm praying and I'm praying and I don't see an answer. I'm waiting and it could be disappointment. It could be frustration. It could be a fear of failure. Like some people might be so afraid to fail that I don't even want to be excited to try. So let me just kind of just coast through life. Because what's the phrase? Oh my gosh! It's like there's a stupid quote. It's like you miss 100% of the shots you never take. That's apathy. It's like I'm just not gonna try. I'm not gonna exceed. I'm not gonna go. I'm not just gonna. I'm too scared to fail, but I'm just gonna. And guys, that sense of meh is I think you know that. It's not a healthy way to live, but it creeps on you very slowly. In fact, just like a leak in a roof. So can we put that picture up? Just this last year, after 17 years, we had to fix our roof, and I just fixed to get a new one because we had a big leak. Anybody seen one of those? Nightmare scenario for a homeowner. God, some of you, I'm like, don't remind me. I know. Some of you probably have one of those and been ignoring. Yikes. And so, listen, dope. And so why is it not a good idea, some of you, to ignore just a little water? It's just a little drip. Some of you know why. Help me out. mold. It's just a little drip. It's just a little here. So, the sink just dripped just a little. This is just a little. It's not a big deal. It's just a little. Well, guys, mold. Just a little leak can create a mold that will grow like cancer in your home. And what was a cheap fix now becomes even more expensive. What was a one-day fix might take weeks because you just were, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal. Guys, we do this a lot with our own faith when it's like, it's just one little sin. I was like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing the most. It's not that big of a deal. I know God's word says it, but really, I don't know. There's a lot of things that we can do. Look, it's just one person that I hate. I can forgive everybody else, but this one. I got this one anxiety. I got this one person I can't forgive. I got this one situation I can't get over, but it's just one. It's just one. Guys, I'm here to tell you no, because what's so sad about this is that this apathy, when it begins to leak little by little, it just makes you numb to everything. And it kills you from the inside, and it could rob you from the joy of your salvation. How sad is it that the priests and the scribes that were waiting for the Messiah for generations, right? These guys show up 500-600 miles away, and they make the trip from where they were to Bethlehem. And do you know how far Bethlehem was from Jerusalem? 5 to 6 miles. It was right around the corner. These guys were able to go 500 to 600 miles. This group couldn't go 5 to 6. They were so close, but yet ended up so far. Because they were like, it's not that important. Yeah, it's a Messiah, I guess. You know what's even great? The shepherds 2 years ago were the ones telling everybody about what they saw. And so not only have they ignored the word over the last who knows how long, they've ignored the rumor that there was a baby born. And the shepherds were, mentioning all that. They've ignored all of this stuff because they're just in their rhythm. They're in their routine. Guys, this is the one that I did not want to fly over because it is probably the most dangerous thing for you and me in our faith. Do you know how it is that you can say, listen, I can read my Bible every day and I can pray before and I start my day and end it before my meals. I can show up and I can be energetic when I sing and I can show up and give an encouraging word, when I need to. But if all of those things is just surface slush, if it's just surface slush and it's just a thing that you just do because, listen, even Christianese, you can learn Christianese. You don't know Christianese? You can learn the phrases. You can learn the habits. You can learn the poses. Okay? You can learn the poses, the demeanor, and it looks like you got it all together. And you couldn't be further from the truth. But the sad part is that if you think you're fine, but in reality, you haven't even felt anything in forever. That right there is the one thing that we have to constantly guard against. To think I'm safe, to think I'm good. I don't have to, I've been saved. I don't have to pursue. No, you don't even understand yourself and the flesh inside of you that would love to lull you to sleep and make you think you're following Jesus, and in reality, you're not. And that's what happened to many of the churches Paul had to talk to. They became apathetic or discouraged or disillusioned by other things. They got distracted or whatever. And that's, we have to guard against that. And so when we look at these three guys, when we look at these three groups, guys, you got to see one thing. We talked about this last week, but even more. The king was born and was there. 200, at least 2 years or so, still hanging out in Bethlehem. I don't know why they hung out there for that long, but they were there. And so they hung out there, and we didn't see any hoopla, anything else. Even the city was disturbed about the news, but no one else showed and followed the wise men. And I was like, whatever, it's the news of the day. Oh, no, squirrel. And then they found something else to pay attention to, and then boom. Guys, when we look at this, we have to realize that in the same thing, what is this? Jesus' birth anchor and show us that he came to us, because we could not go to him. He came to us. But even that is technically, to a certain extent, not enough. You must go to him. You see that? He came to us, but you must go to him. You must go to him. And that's what we see the wise men. Look at what they did. They were far from God. They were far. They were not Jews. They were outside of the promise. And they went above and beyond. And what an expensive gift. I mean, this was not a cheap thing, guys. They did not get these gifts from Five Below. I mean, they literally brought it, all right? And so they came back in the negative in this trip, but they came back more positive than ever because they saw the King of Kings, the promised Messiah in front of them, and they put their hope and trust. And one day we will get to praise, surrounded the throne with these wise men. We get to worship the King along with them. The wisest thing that any one of you can do is to put your trust in Christ. And if they could see a toddler, what's impressive about a toddler, right? And they could see a toddler, and God could convince them of that, and they did it in faith. We don't look at a toddler. No, we look at a risen Savior. We have more reason to believe, more reason to have that confidence. So do we? Are we overwhelmed with joy when we look into the scriptures? Are we overwhelmed with joy when you gather on a Sunday, whether if it's online or here? Is there joy in your heart to know I am going to worship God with other believers, that other people that have encouraged me, that I'm encouraging? I mean, is there joy in your heart? And there should be, because look at what they did, and they just could not help but just to live that sacrifice and worship God. And we need to learn to humble ourselves constantly, humbling ourselves to the word and to one another. And so in guarding against Herod, we don't want to be Herod. What are we going to fight against that? And what are we on guard for? Pride. The pride that says, I just don't want to know anymore. No, I want it my way. I want this. It's all about me. No, we already see, guys, that is not a good place. We have to put a sword to pride. We have to die to pride every day. And the crazy thing about your flesh, it respawns every time you kill it, right? Literally, your flesh respawns every time. And there's no end to this, but there is a reason for it. We can talk about that another day, but we have to kill pride. And whether it rises up again for another 1,000 times, then 1,001, we bring it and humble ourselves, because pride kept Herod from the king. And we don't want anything keeping us from the King of Kings. But then the other one that we have to put a sword to is apathy. When you begin to realize, I'm losing a sense of joy in reading the scriptures. I'm losing a sense of joy in gathering with believers. I'm losing a sense of my joy in identifying with Christ. I'm losing a sense of my joy with prayer. I'm losing a sense of my joy. Whatever, when you're losing it, then I hope you lose it. And and you address it. Why? What feeling is being fueled by this? Like, what fuels this feeling? What is it? And bring it to the Lord and bring it to one another, that we may encourage each other and carry one another and address it. Because the scariest thing that I feel, even for me, is to be in a place where I think I'm fine, but I've gone so numb, I don't realize how far I've drifted. And the reality, guys, that could be a lot of us. That could be some of you. I guarantee you it's one of you, number one, just the odds. Online, maybe it's you. But the reality is that happens to a lot of us because we deal with disappointment, discouragement, a lot of things, and a lot of things can rob us from that. And so, guys, look, the bad news of the story, think about put yourselves in the Jews' shoes. Think about, you're in the Jews' shoes, all right? And you're reading the book of Matthew. And at the end, he's, the whole confirmation, Jesus was the Messiah. Where is he now? At the end of Matthew when they read it. Gone. Not here, right? He's up in heaven. And so could you imagine you're the Jews and they're like saying, wait a minute, we missed it? We missed it? That was him? We missed it? Could you imagine? Now what do we do? What do we do now? We missed. But Matthew ends like saying, don't worry, he's coming back. And he doesn't want you to miss that one. So put your trust in him, because he laid down his life even for you while you didn't care, while you were not whatever. If God could save the Jews, and if God is willing to save them, what about us? Like the wise men, it doesn't matter how far you are from God. That's the good news, guys, is that the King of Kings came to us. And this is the beautiful part. The kings, the wise men, they gave gifts to Jesus, right? But now we have the King of Kings, and he doesn't expect a gift from us. Oh, no, he comes bearing gifts. And the gift is eternal life. a free gift of eternal life that you can have. That is the King of Kings. You and I have nothing to offer him. And that's the other bad news. The bad news is that, we can't go to him. And we don't have anything to offer him. He knows. And that's why he did what he did. And he secured the greatest gift ever on the cross for us. And now you have it. But the question is, what are you doing with it? Are you living? Are you enjoying? Are you seeing? Are you grateful for that gift? And by the way, if Tito, all right, what do I do if I feel that sense of apathy? If I feel I'm losing my joy, my praying, and this and that, I was like, then look to the cross and remember. And stay there until you do. Look to the cross and see what he did for us and for you. Look to the cross. Because the promise of Micah, he says, and they will live securely, eternally. And he ends, and he says, and that his greatness will be known until the ends of the earth. And how beautiful. Matthew ends his gospel, telling the people, go and make disciples and go into the ends of the earth. Because the Messiah from Micah is this Messiah too. And guys, the beautiful thing about us is that no matter how far you are, even how far you feel, he's right there. But we must come to him, humble ourselves, confess whatever it is. It is not too late until it is. Until it is. It will not be too late until it is your last day on this earth, or until the day Christ returns. And so, guys, I pray that we may take and we must submit ourselves to the sword of God, that we may lay down our pride and present your apathy, and let the loving word of God just strike that to the core, so that you can be like the Messiah, you can be like those wise men and rejoice when you see the light of the world. And like that Christmas song says, oh, come, let us adore him. That's what they were wanting to do, and no one did. So what are you going to do? Because I'm here telling you what the priest should have done. Hey, the Messiah is that way. Let's go. And so, guys, I want to encourage you, don't just say, all right, that was great, and then you move on because you're no better than them. You're no better than them. No, turn to him. Turn to him. He came all this way and did all this stuff just so you can see and be amazed, humbled, hopefully, and find there is no greater joy than to know Jesus, trust in him, and follow. So